Somebody asked, I forget about her. Somebody asked me a question last night. I think it was Veronica about the HOA dues and what if delinquent HOAs, if that what kind of lien that would be. So I did a little bit of research, and failure to pay your HOA dues. The HOA can file a lien on you after it's delinquent. So is it 30 days? Is it 60 days? Whatever is stated in the bylaws. And how they do it is they start with going to the clerk of courts. So once approved by the clerk of courts, it becomes a judgment. A judgment is a general lien. So the HOA, and that's the process, because remember, a judgment comes through the courts. So that's how it becomes a judgment. So it would be a delinquent HOA dues would eventually be a general lien, which why don't you guys remind me in the chat while we're on it? General lien attaches to what? What does the general lien attach to? And welcome if you're just joining us. So the general lien, yeah, the general lien attaches to the person. The specific lien attaches to the property. The general lien attaches to the person. So anytime you convey property, again, you'll have to pay off all your liens. And the thing with personal property taxes, those are delinquent or current. So even if you have delinquent personal property taxes, maybe you never paid 2021 personal property taxes, or if you currently owe personal property taxes for 2022, then they're going to go ahead and take all that at settlement before you convey the property. So that was that. Thank you for the question. I never claim to have all of your answers. So if I can find an answer for you, I will, as long as it's related-ish to the test, right? Like ish, right? Okay. So I got one more announcement, one more thing I want to say. I just want to make sure everybody is seeing this. This is the email that you guys have from Lane that you use to access the class. And it's got the class dates and everything. It's got good stuff. It's got your Zoom link. But I just want to make sure everybody, I know within the next few weeks, I'm going to start getting lots of questions about your end of class exam. And remember, we're getting there. We're covering it. You know, don't put your cart in front of your horse. But if you start to have a lot of questions about what you can expect for your online end of class exam, we use a program called Class Marker. And within this email you have from Lane, you have a little tutorial on Class Marker. So if you want a better understanding of what your online exam is going to look like, it's like 3 minutes or 5 minutes, something like that. Don't hold me to that. It's short. So if you're curious about what that online test looks like, you can watch this little tutorial. And rest assured, we'll talk a lot more about your end of class exam and your state exam as we get closer. I mean, we're only week 2 into it, right? So we're still a ways out to discuss too much. So bear with me. I promise we'll get to it. So I just wanted to make sure everybody saw that video for now. Does anybody have any questions or comments before we like really get started? Everybody doing okay tonight? Feeling good? Staying warm? It's cold out this morning. All right. I think we should play a game. Y'all want to play a game? Y'all get your phones out. And we're gonna Kahoot. And you give me just 1 second, I'll give you instructions on what to do with your phones. Anybody ever Kahoot before? Anybody? A couple of you? Kahooting's fun. So you guys are one of 3 things with your phone. And this one is new. I just learned about it. So either download the Kahoot app. You guys see where my spotlight is? You go to the website, kahoot.it. And now, new to Kahoot, you can scan the QR code. And as I understand from my day class, if you scan the QR code, it'll take you straight to, like, you don't have to download anything or website or anything. So the QR code might be the way to go. As we're seeing, once you get in, maybe using the QR code. It looks like that's pretty simple, actually. It's going to ask you for a game pin. This game's game pin is 9866922 at the top there. And then I'll ask you for your name. You can use whatever name you want to, nickname, real name, whatever. I just ask that you keep it clean. So while you guys are getting in, let me tell you what Kahoot is. It's a question and answer kind of game. So once we start, right now you're not seeing much on your phones. What you're in, you're not seeing much on your phones. But once we start, you're going to see a question on the screen, my screen, and we'll read the question, and then you'll get 4 answer choices. And those 4 answer choices will come up on your phone. So you select this one, this one, this one, or this one. You choose. It's not up there yet, but it will be once the answers come up on my screen. So then you select which one you want. And then at the end of the time, it's going to show us all what we answered. Nobody will ever know specifically what you answered, but it'll kind of give us an overview overall of how we're all doing. Please be aware in Kahoot, once you select your phone, once you tap an answer, you can't change it. So just make sure when you answer, you select the one that you want, because you can't go back and change it. That is one thing I wish they would, because sometimes we change our mind, right? Sometimes we're quick to, and then, you know, you can't go back and change it. Kahoot does rank you. So not if you get the answer right, and if you're the fastest or one of the fastest, then you'll be ranked. I think real estate agents in general are competitive. We just have a competitive nature to us. So Kahoot's hoping bringing out your inner competitiveness and getting you started in that for your career. If you're having problems, try the QR code. Is that what you guys are doing, is a QR code? That really seems to be the way to go. So you just scan it and then it just takes you. See, I like that. I like that.
So should I already have an account or no?
Nope. Nope. You
Okay.
don't need an account. I just need an account. Yep. Yep. So if you scan the QR code, it sounds like scanning the QR code is just taking us straight to asking for a game pin.
Yeah, the QR code for me, when I did the camera to it, it highlighted in yellow. So I had to tap on the link and then it took me there.
Great. Great. Yeah, the last class I did, we finished around Thanksgiving and they didn't have the QR code yet. So this is a pretty new feature. So Kahoot also benefited from everybody going online. I attended a Kahoot training shortly after we went online to kind of expand my knowledge a little bit. And they did a Kahoot. I don't know, there's like 1,300 of us on the call from all over the world. That was fun. That was fun. I got to say I played a game with everybody all over the world. If you're having problems, let me know. The problem with being online is I can't run over there and look over your shoulder. So it might be if you can't get on this game, you can just kind of play along in your mind. And if you're having problems, we can always hang out after class and get you on. We will Kahoot several times. And we're going to go through the first question together. The first question doesn't really count. And if your phone goes to sleep, you disappear from the screen here. So I'll give you just another minute to get in. It looks like most of us are in though. This Kahoot is going to be on units 2 and 3. So units 2 and 3, there'll be questions. So, right, so once you put your name in, you're not seeing anything. There's nothing to see right now. That's right. Your phone doesn't change until I put a question up. We read the question and then the answer choices, and then your phone will change, and we'll see that in just a second. So you're set. Looks like a couple of used phones went to sleep. So if you guys want to wake that up, we'll hit start. So see what we got here. Let's see what Kahoot's all about. Again, the first one doesn't really count, right? So we're just going to kind of walk through it together. So we're going to see a question come up on the screen. The main purpose of the North Carolina Real Estate Commission is, now look at your phone. Do you see a red block, a blue block, a yellow block, and a green block? So you just touch the color that you think the answer is. These questions are timed. We've got about 7 more seconds. We don't spend all night cahooting. And then at the end of the time, we're going to see not only the right answer, but how we all did as a class. And that's Kahoot. Isn't that fun? So the main purpose of the Real Estate Commission is to protect the public. Thank you, everybody, for not saying they have no purpose. We already know enough to know that, right? The Real Estate Commission does issue you your real estate license, but that's not their main purpose. How do they issue you your license? To protect their public, right? You have to prove to them that you're worthy of a license. And how do you prove that to them? You pass my end of class exam and you pass their state exam. You prove to them that you have the minimum competency necessary to work with their public. And upon proving that, they'll issue your real estate license. Questions on the question before we see the rest of it here. Everybody good with the question? So then we see everybody's ranking. So Fitzander answered it the fastest. Not only did they get it right, but they answered it the fastest, followed by Tara D, Clara D, Sisk, and Taylor D. So then we'll go on to question 2. I do not talk during all the questions during Kahoot, just that first one. I do shut up and let you guys think. So just kind of walking through the first one. Any questions before we see it for real, play for real? Everybody ready to Kahoot? All right, let's see what we got. Question number 2. The rights of ownership of real property include all of the following except. About 10 more seconds. The rights of ownership of any real property include all the following except, good job, you guys, appurtenant. Remember our rights of ownership, we talk about our legal bundle of rights. How to remember our legal bundle of rights? Deep C. So we had our disposition twig, our exclusion twig, our enjoyment twig, our possession twig, and our control twig. If something is appurtenant, what does it mean to be appurtenant? If it's appurtenant, then it runs with the land, right? It runs with the land. So we talk about our rights of ownerships. We're talking about our legal bundle of rights from Unit 2. Questions on this one? Okay. So see how we're doing now. We've got Fitzander staying on top, Mackenzie creeped up, Tara D, Danielle, Clara. Sabrina is our highest climber this round. She's up 8 places, so it gives us little progresses as we go. Kind of fun. The rights of the owner of property located along the banks of a small stream are called. Ten seconds. The rights of the owner of property located along the banks of a small stream are riparian rights. We got it down to 2, right? It's either littoral rights or riparian rights. Both are water rights. Riparian rights are for bodies of water without a tide. Littoral rights are for bodies of water with a tide. So small streams not going to have a tide. So we're talking about our riparian rights. Questions on this one? Okay. So now we got Fitzander, Mackenzie, Tara D. Sabrina's on fire this round. And then Taryn. And it keeps ranking you as we go. A brother and sister cannot concurrently own real estate in North Carolina as seven seconds. Brother and sister cannot concurrently own real estate in North Carolina as tenants by the entirety. Why? Tenants by the entirety is set aside for married people. In North Carolina, brother and sister can't be married because, ew. So they can own as joint tenants, they can own as tenants in common, but they cannot own as tenants by the entirety. That's only for married people. Questions on this one? Maybe in other states, but not here. Okay. So we got, we got some competition going on. Tara D, Fitzander, Mackenzie, Taron, Sabrina. John is our highest climber this round. He's up 5 places. Which of the following is a lien on real estate? Ten seconds. So the following is a lien. Good job, you guys. A mortgage. When you see lien, what's the word that you see? When you see lien, see the word loan. If you have a lien, you owe somebody some money. So mortgage, you owe money to the lender. It happens. This is why we learn, right? Everything you're looking at on this screen is an encumbrance. It all affects property, right? That's everything we talked about in Unit 3. But the lien in this case would be the mortgage. Questions on this one? So we got Tara D, Fitzander, Taron, Lisa, and Shanika. Danielle is the highest climber. She's at 4 places this round. And the last one for this, which of the following is not required to be recorded in order to be valid? Ten seconds. Ugh. So this is a good one. Mechanics lien. Remember, everything the mechanics got to record. How many days do they have to record? Why don't you guys remind me in the chat? How many days does the mechanic have to record from when the work ended? Yep. So in order for the mechanic to have the right to collect, they have to record. If they don't record, nobody knows it's out there, right? Why do we record? Is putting notice out to the world, hey, you owe this landscaper money for rose bushes. The judgment lien, again, this is something from a judge, as mentioned earlier, or the courts, as we mentioned earlier, maybe the HOA, and then our deed of trust or a mortgage. So what's up with the Ad Valorem Tax Lien? All my property owners right now, all properties in North Carolina have a lien on them. That went into place January 1st. It's just automatic. It just happens on January 1st that all property owners owe taxes for 2022. It doesn't become a recorded lien until January 5th, 2023 next year, until you're delinquent. If you don't pay this year's taxes, then they file it to let the world know, hey, they still owe the county for 2022. Okay, so you have a lien on your property right now, but it's automatic. Everybody does. It's not special right now, right? It's not special only if it doesn't get paid January 5th, 2023. Questions on this one? Okay, so the conclusion to Kahoot, they do like this big dramatic conclusion. So let's check this out. We got podium winners. Our third place winner is Tara D. Yay. Our second place winner is it Sari? Did I say that right? And then our first place winner was Fitzing. And then it gives us our runners up, but I can't see it because my Zoom bar is in the way. Taron and Lisa, there it is. And that's Kahoot. What was the answer? The Ad Valorem Tax Lien. It doesn't become a recorded lien until it's late. Okay, you all have a lien. We're my property owners. You have a lien for this year's taxes. How do you prevent it from being on public notice? Pay your taxes by January 5th, 2023. Okay, they only care about it if it's delinquent. Does that make sense? They know they're going to get their money one way or another. It's the government. Don't worry about the government not getting their money. Trust me, they will. Questions? Kahoot, do we like Kahoot? Is Kahoot kind of fun? Kind of? Cool. All right. Yeah, we'll Kahoot every 2 or 3 units or so. We'll Kahoot. Kind of see how it helps me to see how we're doing as a whole. Hopefully it helps you too. You know, treat it as practice. If you got a question wrong, make a note. I think if you get the app, I'm not sure what the QR code does, but I think if you have the app, you can go back. I'm not sure. I don't see what you guys see. Does it let you see anything on the QR code if you went in through the QR code, or is it just gone? Is it disappeared?
It offered me to get the app if I just tap at the bottom. It takes me to my app store.
Gotcha. So yeah, you can either get, but it seems, I don't know, I kind of like the QR code. Seems like we can get in pretty quickly. Okay. All right. Well, it sounds like we are just ready to jump right in to Unit 4. Unit 4 is our property description. We're going to talk about how we can describe property, the legal description, surveys. I know we said last night we were going to talk more about surveys. In the end of Unit 4, I do have some more math. But the good news is once we get through Unit 4, we don't see much more math again for a few more units. So that gives you a couple units to get caught up on the math. Again, I understand most of you guys work during the day, so you probably didn't have time to look at any of the math we did last night. I don't want you to feel bombarded or overwhelmed. So please just understand, once we do the math tonight, I got a little bit of math in the end of Unit 5, nothing to get excited about at all. And then we won't see math again until like Unit 8. So you guys got time to get caught up. Okay. So Unit 4 with our property descriptions, we are going to describe different types of legal descriptions. We have several different ways that we can define the legal description. We're going to talk more in this unit about the importance of a survey and why we should encourage buyers to have a survey done. And then we're going to look at some area and related calculations. So if you want to go out and measure, for example, the kitchen of a house before you list it, or if you want to determine how big the acre is, how big the lot is, excuse me, before you list it. Those are the calculations we're looking at in Unit 4. So let's first start talking about what we mean by legal description. The legal description is just the exact location of a parcel of land. It tells us where it's located. Kind of think of the legal description as the tour of the parameters of the property. It doesn't necessarily tell us what's on the property. It doesn't describe the improvements, but it does tell us where our lines are, where our property lines are. And the only reliable legal description that we can depend on is one that's performed by a surveyor. This is another unit where we're learning how to stay in our lanes. I'm not a surveyor. I cannot tell you where your property line is. All buyers purchasing land should be encouraged to have a survey done so they can determine their property lines. We'll talk a little bit more about the survey in just a second. I get this question a lot, so let's go ahead and address this. What if the seller purchased a survey when they bought and they're willing to share it with the buyer? Well, first off, understand if the seller has a survey, they don't have to share it with anybody. It's their survey, it's their property. Even if they choose to share it with the buyer, though, the buyer should still be encouraged to have another survey done because things change, right? Don't think of the seller that only lived here for 3 years. What about the seller that lived here for like 30, right? Things change in 30 years. So all buyers are encouraged, if they're buying with land, any kind of land, they're encouraged to have a survey done. And again, we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a second. So there are 4 different ways that we can define the property lines, the legal description. 4 different ways we can define the legal description. And the first is the primary one that we use here in North Carolina, and it's called meets and bounds. And meets and bounds is a tour of the parameter of the property. We start and end at the point of beginning. The surveyor makes his way around the property, moving from monument to monument to monument, works his way back up to the point of beginning. He's just defining the lines, the property lines. So he starts and stops at the point of beginning. Monuments, anything can be used for a monument. It's just a marker that tells a surveyor where to turn. You go west for 180 feet and then you hit a monument and you turn. So you go south for 130 feet, you hit a monument and you turn. You go east, you hit a monument and you turn. You guys with me? And you go back up to the point of beginning. We'll look at a picture in just a second. Monuments can be things from nature. So maybe a monument could be a rock or a tree. Monuments can be stakes that the surveyor puts in the ground. If they don't have any rocks or trees nearby that they can use. Have you guys ever seen a stake in the ground with a little pink flag on it? It's a telltale sign that a surveyor was just there. So they put their stakes in the ground. And again, sometimes the problems with monuments is that they move. Do rocks roll away? Do trees fall down? Do kids get bored in the summertime sometimes and go out and move those stakes? Unfortunately, sometimes that happens. I had a builder buddy several years ago. He bought this huge tract of land and he was subdividing it. And his surveyor spent like an entire week out there subdividing the property and staking the cleared land. It was totally cleared. And that weekend, after the surveyor had been there for a week, that weekend, kids came out. We're assuming it was kids. Kids came out, moved all those stakes. That entire week's work was just, it was gone. It was done. So again, we're assuming it was kids. So this is one reason why all buyers are encouraged to have their own survey done, so they know for sure where their property lines are. The meets and bounds are just the calls and directions. So like I just said, west 180 degrees, that's your calls and directions to move from monument to monument. Again, starting at the point of beginning and ending. So you can see a picture here. We start in the top left and we go, southeast 180 feet to this monument, and then we turn. And then we go southwest, 160 to this monument, and we turn. We come this way until we hit this monument and we turn, and then back up to the point of beginning. So it's just a tour of the parameter of the property. This is the primary way that we find legal description in North Carolina, meets and bounds. Questions about this, meets and bounds? Look with me, Will, if you will, in your book real quick, page 73. You see that paragraph? You see the picture of figure 4.1? That's another example for you, but do you see that paragraph right above it? A tract of land located in blank, comma, blank, whatever county, North Carolina. You guys see that paragraph there? That's surveyor speak. That's how a surveyor would describe what you're looking at in figure 4.1. So we get to look at the picture. They get to use their surveyor language. Let's see, can a buyer ask the seller to pay for a survey? Sure, they can ask. Is the seller going to do it? They're probably up the purchase price, right? I mean, it would probably be really rare. You can always ask. You can always ask, but I would think it would be a unique situation that a seller would agree to have a survey done for a buyer. We're going to talk about closing settlement once we get closer, once we get further in. The buyer could ask for seller pay closing costs. So that could kind of roll into a survey if the seller agrees. We'll talk more about that in a couple weeks. Okay. The second way we can find the legal description, we're not doing too much here. Typically we see this out west. Out west, they use something called the rectangular survey system or the government survey system. Look at that picture. Does that look like anything we see in North Carolina? Have you guys ever flown in a plane? Does this look like you're flying over North Carolina? This doesn't really meet our topography, does it? Have you ever flown to Vegas or out west and you get over the Mississippi and the mountains? Now we're starting to look like, I'm like the Garfield cat when I fly, right? I'm the one that's all in the window trying to take it all in. It's a good time. This looks like something we see out west, and this is a grid system. So the rectangular survey out west is a grid system. And it's a grid system of intersecting lines, principal baselines. Your meridians are your northwest lines, baselines are your east-west lines. Just think of putting a grid over a map, and you have your rectangular survey system. It's a grid system. The rectangular government survey system uses townships and sections. Every township has 36 sections. Each section has 640 acres. Townships have 36 sections. Each section in a township has 640 acres. Let's look in our books on page 76. Figure 4.5 on 76 is our township, right? One township out of how many? However many we need. There are 36 sections in a township. Each section has 640 acres. They say when you are counting the sections in a township, count them like you're plowing a field. I myself have never plowed a field, but if you look at it, it makes sense. So section number 1 is in the top right, and we're going to go right to left. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then you come down. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. You guys see? And then down again, 13, 14, 15. You're going this way, like you're plowing a field. If you take section 16 and blow it up, that's what you're looking at in figure 4.6. So you can see the property lines, the different ownership, the different property lines and how much they own. So that one section of 640 acres has, however many property owners that occupy that area. And that's what that grid system is that they use out west. There's a number you all need to know. For my test, for the state exam, in real life, you'll use it every single day in your real estate career. And that number is 43,560. Every single acre has 43,560 square feet. How many square feet are in 1 acre? 43,560. Part of the math that we do at the end of this unit is going to be focusing on this number. Put it on a flashcard, write it on your hand, whatever, but we need to know this number. Again, you need to know this for your test. I use this every single day. If you want to really impress a buyer, when a buyer's walking property with you and they say, gee, I wonder how many acres this is, you whip out your calculator and you can tell them real quick. And that's what I'm getting ready to teach you guys. Karen took my joke. One way that we like to remember this number is 4 little old ladies going 35 and a 60. You've heard this somewhere before. 4 little old ladies going 35 and a 60. I don't care how you memorize this number, but you will need to know this. And again, this is the math that we're going to do at the end of this unit. Questions on the government survey system, the rectangular survey system? The third way that we can define the legal description is by referring to a recorded plat map. Recorded plat maps are very common with subdivisions, communities, neighborhoods. Plat maps are recorded before the first unit's sold. So we have to have the finalized plat map for that area. We can use a recorded plat map in North Carolina as long as one's available. Again, if it's not in a subdivision, then there's not going to be one available. If there's any questions about what's on the recorded plat map, the buyer is encouraged to have a surveyor come out and actually identify their property lines using meets and bounds. So on page 78 of your book, 78, is our subdivision plat map. Looks like a pretty good cul-de-sac right there, doesn't it? You're not going to find this in downtown. You're not going to see something like this in downtown. So again, if it's available in North Carolina, we can use it. You see lot 1 is the top left. It shows us the property dimensions. Lot 2 is next to it, 3. You guys see the easement? There's an easement there for public utilities. The plat map points that out for us. Lots 4 and 5 come around the cul-de-sac there. And then 6, 7, and 8 take us back out to the road. So if there's a plat map available in North Carolina, we can use it. Again, if there's any question, if your buyer is buying lot 1 and they have questions about what their lines actually are, where they are, they should be encouraged to have a survey done. Questions on the recorded plat map? The last way we have to define a legal description is to referring to a recorded deed. Deeds have to, or should have, I should say, should have a legal description. So if we want to refer to a recorded deed, we're not doing this much anymore today. The question of accuracy comes up sometimes. Another reason we're not doing this, we kind of got lazy some time ago. And on our deeds, instead of saying the legal description of the property, we were saying something like, see previously recorded deed. So then the attorney does their research and they find the previously recorded deed that says, see previously recorded deed. I think we thought we were trying to take a shortcut. We got a little lazy. So you may not have a legal description on a deed. Again, the most accurate way in North Carolina is meets and bounds. Recorded plat map will also work if available, if it's in a subdivision, a community that has one. So there are 4 ways of finding the legal description. Any questions so far? Your book on page 79 talks about an informal reference. The street address is the most common informal reference. If you're conveying property, the street address alone is not sufficient. I'll say that again. If you're conveying property, the street address alone is not sufficient. It's an informal reference. Do we use a street address? Of course. In addition to the street address, we're going to use a legal description, as much of the legal description as we can. So the street address is not going to be used for a sales contract because we're conveying property. It's an agreement between the parties to convey property. We could just use a street address for a listing contract, a listing agreement, or a lease because we're not conveying. The property's not changing hands. Again, the more the better. So even in a listing agreement, of course, we have a place for a street address, but we also have a place to add legal descriptions. We'll look at our agency agreements in Unit 8. So we'll look at our listing contract. Sales contracts in Unit 10. So we'll see it there as well too. Previewing. Okay. So let's talk about this survey. Surveys can only be prepared by a licensed surveyor. As a real estate agent, we shouldn't be offering opinion about parcel boundaries, easements. Is that an encumbrance? Is that an encroachment? I can't act like a surveyor. Remember, I got to stay in my lane. I'm not a surveyor. I'm not an attorney. I'm not an appraiser. I'm just a real estate agent. So my buyer starts asking me about their property lines. I always need to encourage them to have a survey done. Remember, I think it was last night, we talked about encroachments, and we talked about that fence. And we said the only thing we know by looking at a fence is that somebody put a fence there. The fence does not tell you that's where the property lines are. Maybe they had it surveyed before they put it up. Maybe they don't. Maybe it's an encroachment. Maybe it's going on somebody else's property. Maybe it isn't. Guys, I can't tell you how many times I've been in a backyard with a buyer and talked to them about a survey. And they've said, Julie, I don't need to. Julie, do you see that fence right there? That's going to tell me where my property lines are. No, it doesn't work that way. Y'all, I had a buyer look at me once as serious as they could be when I started talking to him about a survey. And they said, I can see the mow line. I can tell where my property line is. And I said, are you serious? They could have had like a 14-year-old out there mowing the grass. How do you know that the mow line is the property line, right? So we just have to help educate our buyers and help them understand the importance of a survey. Lenders typically do not require a survey. If they have any questions about, for example, flood hazard zones, they may require a survey. But for the most part, surveys are optional, and buyers have the right not to purchase them, not to have it done. My husband and I just bought this house 2020. I guess it was a couple years ago now. And we have a shed in the back corner. And I wanted to have a survey done anyway. But we had it surveyed because I was a little concerned about that shed. And our survey came back and my shed is in by a whopping foot. But you know what? It's in. And if the neighbor ever comes knocking on my door and says, your shed's on my property, I'm like, I got a whole foot to spare. So the survey kind of gave me that knowledge, helped me. I didn't want to deal with it after closing if it was going to be an issue, but it gave me that knowledge to know that the shed is in fact, it's not an encroachment. It is in fact on my property. Surveys can also help with, I'll come back to title insurance in a second. Surveys can also help identify if there's any flood hazards. If there's flood hazards on the property, flood insurance will be required. We got a whole unit dedicated to insurance. So we'll talk more about property insurance in Unit 13, and we'll revisit flood hazard. And then in Unit 5, if we don't see it tonight, we'll see it tomorrow night. But in Unit 5, we have title insurance. We'll talk about title insurance. And what buyers need to understand, so title insurance covers the current owner for errors of the past. So anything that comes up on the title before you own the property, title insurance is there to protect the current owner. If the buyer chooses not to have a survey done before they bought, and something comes up on the title that might have been discovered had we done a survey, title insurance is not going to protect them. So that's another good reason. And again, we'll talk more about title insurance, but that's another good reason to encourage a buyer to have a survey done, so they can be protected by their title insurance if something comes up later. Questions or comments on a survey? You guys ever had one done? How much do surveys cost? You know, it depends on the size of the lot, the topography of it, what you're looking at. I think in general, if you're buying 1/4 of an acre in a subdivision somewhere, you're probably looking at about $400 or $500, $600, something like that. Going up to that, the more land that you have. Do I mind saying that one last time? Saying what? I don't know if I can or not. Specifically about what? Yeah. About the buyer getting a survey before they buy. So title insurance, if the buyer refuses a survey and then they purchase the property and something comes up on the title that could have been discovered had they had a survey done, title insurance may not protect them. And again, we're going to talk more about title insurance in unit 5, next unit. Like I said, if we don't get to title insurance tonight, then we'll get to it tomorrow night. I'm not always good about remembering what I just said. Questions about a survey, other comments? You guys had one done? I think I'm on about 4/10 of an acre or something like that. And I think ours was about $500-600. But it depends on how many trees and hills, and there's a lot of factors that play into it. Okay, why don't you guys remind me in the chat? Don't look at your notes, just remind me how many square feet are in 1 acre. Here's on 0.31 and paid $450. Embed that number in your head. Yep. So there are 43,560 square feet in 1 acre. We're going to learn how we convert square feet to acres, acres to square feet. Okay, so the problem may have you find the square feet and ask you how many acres. The problem may tell you the acres and ask you how many square feet. So this is one reason why this number is really important now, to know how to convert those. So if you are asked to go from acres to square feet, you multiply. This will make a lot more sense in just a second. If you're asked to go from square feet to acres, you divide. I learned a trick to help me remember this. You guys want to know my trick? And guess what? Look at me. I can't help it but getting excited. We're my T-bar fans. I figured out how to use the T-bar. So if you don't want to remember this, see, if I haven't converted you to the T-bar yet, I'm working on you. If you want to, an easy way to remember, instead of using rate or percent, I'm taking the T-bar and I'm tweaking it just a little bit. So instead of using rate or percent, we're going to use our magic number of 43,560. Will always go in the bottom right. Acres goes in the bottom left. And square feet goes on top. So again, you have choices. You either remember that if you're going from acres to square feet, you multiply. If you're going from square feet to acres, you divide. Or if you're a T-bar fan or turning into a T-bar fan, 43,560 always goes in the bottom right. I tweaked it just a hair. Square feet on top, acres on bottom. So y'all jot one or the other or both down. We're getting ready to look at a couple examples together. And as with last night, we're going to work through some together, and then I'm going to turn you loose and let you guys do a few. And then rest assured, I got plenty of practice for you outside of class. Okay. Anybody have this? One or the other or both? Okay. So let's look at a couple examples. How many acres are in 21,780 square feet? Give you guys just a second to think about that. If you want to share your answer with me, just please make sure you do so in a private chat. Don't want you giving the answer away to everybody. Okay. So have a minute to think about it. So first off, just stop and think about what we're talking about here. 43,560 square feet an acre. Yes, I have everybody so far, right? Is 21,780 more than or less than 43,560? It is less than, right? So I don't have more than or less than an acre. I have less than. So you can start thinking about your answer before you start working the problem, right? I don't know what the answer is yet, but I know it's going to be less than 1. Everybody see what I'm saying? I'm starting to think about it before I even get into it. So now I am working the problem. I'm solving for acres, which is my X. My 43,560 goes in the bottom right. Square feet goes on top. I take 21,780 and divide it by 43,560, and I get half an acre. Or if you don't like the T-bar yet, you just remember that you take square feet divided by acres to get half an acre. All we're doing is converting square feet to acres. And again, you can kind of look at the problem with these, with measurement problems, and just kind of, so if you have any answer that's more than an acre, you don't even have to do the math. You can eliminate that answer choice, right? Kind of think about it before you even pick up your pencil. Your Vegas odds. The more answer choices you can eliminate, the better chance you got it. You have of getting it right. Okay. So let's look at one. We're going to take a break. Bear with me 1 minute. Let's look at one more. Now, how many square feet are in 4 acres? So again, take just a minute. Talk it through. Think it through. How many square feet are in 4 acres?
Do you want us to put it in chat or no?
If you want to, just put it in a private chat so you're not giving the answer away to everybody else. I don't want people sitting around there going, well, I'm going to wait for John to answer before I put my answer in. Okay, so again, how many square feet are in 4 acres? 4 acres is more than 1, right? So is my answer going to be more than or less than 43,560? It's going to be more than. So again, if you have any answer choices less than 43,560, I'm sorry. Yeah, less than 43,560, then you can eliminate that. So now this time we're solving for our square feet, which is our number on top. My magic number being 43,560, and I have 4 acres. So my T-bar, my back fourth line means multiply. I take 4 times 43,560. How many square feet are in this lot? 174,240. Or if you don't like the T-bar yet, you can multiply 4 times 43,560. Questions so far? Square feet to acres, acres to square feet. See the importance of knowing that number? That number is your formula. If you don't know that number, you can't work these problems. Everybody good so far? Okay. All right. Let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk more about square feet, acres, all that. All right. We're back. Let's see. Do you have a question? So let's go ahead and take attendance. Cameras on. And let's talk about some more math. So we're good with 43,516. Again, we'll see some real problems on that in just a minute, but that just kind of gets us started. When it also comes to square feet, there's some other formulas that we need to know. The basic formula to find square feet says length times width. Length times width of a square or a rectangle will help us find square feet. Just from what you guys know so far, if they want to know, if they want you to convert square feet to acres, wouldn't it be way too easy to give you square feet? Would that not just be way too easy to say here the square feet? So guess what they're going to do? They're going to give you the information that you need to first find the square feet, and then you convert the square feet to acres. It's one of these multi-step problems is where we're eventually heading. So when you're measuring, let's say, for example, you're measuring a kitchen. You got a listing and you're measuring the rooms, and we're going to talk about measuring in Unit 8. So hang on to that for right now. Let's just focus on the map. And for simplicity, let's just say the dimensions of the kitchen are, I don't know, 12 by 12. So how do we find, you go in the kitchen, you measure length times width. And how do we find the square feet of that kitchen? I say 12 by 12, 12 times 12, for a total of 144 square feet. You may also be talking about the dimensions of a lot. And it's the same formula, we just use different terminology when you're talking about a lot. So instead of length, we refer to front foot, and instead of width, we refer to depth. So if you're talking about a lot, what you're looking at, if this is the lot, and here's your road, the front foot is the length. It's the first dimension given on a lot. And when you're looking at the lot of the length, the front foot, you're looking at the area that runs along the road. The front foot of a lot is the area that runs parallel with the road. The depth is the part of the lot that goes away from the road. So if you're looking at a lot, again, this is your front foot and this is your depth. Still, length times width equals square feet, but it's different terminology. It'd be front foot times depth. How deep is the lot and how many front feet run along the road. We may have situations to measure a triangle. We'll talk about that in just a second. Again, for simplicity, let's all agree. I'm going to draw another picture. Can we all agree that a triangle is half of a square? So how do you solve for a triangle? You take length times width and divide it by 2. We're not getting into obtuse triangles or anything crazy like that. A triangle for our purposes is half of a square. So length times width and divide it by 2. That gives you the square foot of that triangle. Questions so far? We're going to talk a little bit more about this. Front foot was run along the road. Length times width gives us square feet. Guess what, T-bar fans? I figured this one out too. If I tweak the T-bar just a little bit, let me give myself some more room. If I tweak it just a little bit, I can put length, width, square feet. So again, you have choices. Use the T-bar or memorize length times width equals square foot. I don't care. I think the T-bar becomes handy when the problem's asking you for length or width. Like it may give you the square feet, it may give you the front feet, but it asks you what's the depth. And I think that's where the T-bar, because when do I divide, when do I multiply? And that's one thing that the T-bar can help us figure out. Everybody good? Can I erase this? Tell me if you're not good, because getting ready to go. Going once, going twice. Okay. So you guys take a minute, kind of study this picture, everything that we just talked about. Tell me in a private chat, what is the front feet, what is the square feet, and what are the acres? Give you about 30 more seconds and then we'll talk about it. We'll let you round, Anna. We'll let you round a little bit. Okay. So first off, we asked, what is the front foot? We said the front foot is what runs along the road. So this area right here is our front feet. There are 150 front feet. Okay. How many feet run along the road of this property? 150 front feet. To find our square feet, we either take length times width or we use our T-bar. Does not matter to me. If I'm looking at the T-bar, the length is the front foot, and it's always the first dimension given. The depth is the part of the property that runs away from the road. So we start at the road and we run away. That's the depth of the property. That's how far back it goes, how deep it is. So 150 by 50 will give us our square feet. So I take 150 times 50, and I get square feet of 7,500. Is 7,500 less than or more than 43,560? It is less than. So I have less than an acre, right? So then the last step is to find my acres using 7,500 square feet and my magic number 43,560. And when I divide 7,500 by 43,560, I get, 0.17 da 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 da. 0.172 should be fine for your acres. And if you don't like the T-bar, then we got it worked out here for you as well. When it comes to rounding, they say in general, if you go out 3 digits until you get to the end. So if you go out at least 3 digits, you can't miss a problem by rounding alone. In other words, you're not going to have answer choices so close. They're not going to have 0.172 as a choice, 0.1721763 as a choice, and 0.17, right? They're not going to have answer choices that close. So you can't miss by rounding alone. As long as you got to 0.17-ish, your multiple choice, you'll be able to figure out which one it is. Did I have a question?
Do you have to know the square feet to get to the acres?
Yes. Yep. Because if I don't know the square feet, then I have 2 X's. And I can only solve for 1 X at a time. There's no possible way to solve for 2 unknown variables. Yeah, Veronica?
Can you say that one more time when you're asking, is the number less or more than the acres? What was that whole?
So if there's 43,560 square feet in an acre, the question is, if this particular lot has 7,500 square feet, is that more than or less than our magic number of 43,560? So just by looking at the square feet, I can tell if I have less than an acre, more than an acre. Do I have exactly an acre, right? Because I know every acre has 43,560.
Right.
So if I look at 7,500, I think it's less than 43,560. Thus, it's less than 1 acre.
So the answer has to be like, okay, thank you. That I'm understanding it now.
So if answer choice C was 1.2 acres, I could rule that one out, right? Because I know there's no way that 7,500 square feet could be 1.2 acres.
Did you divide to get that last answer?
A 7,500, and it's down here too. 7,500 divided by, in our T-bar, the back 4th line means divide. So 7,500 divided by 43,560. Or if you're not liking the T-bar, we got it spelled out down here for you too. So 7,500 divided by 43,560.
So you always got to divide on the right side first?
Ask that in another way. I'm not understanding that question.
Like you divided on the right first, right?
Divide,
Like you divided 43,560 into 7,500.
no. On your calculator, you say 7500.
So you divide
divide-
what's on top.
Correct. That's what this line right here means. Yep. So 7500 divide 43560 equals. What other questions do we have about this? Do pretty good? I think I saw most of what I saw I liked. Oh, I did not mean to do that. Oh, okay. Yeah, Nicole.
I'm trying to figure out what made me, so I did length times width and then I divided it by 2. Is there
Only when you're looking at a triangle.
gotcha?
You only divide by 2 when you're trying to find a triangle, because a triangle is half of a square.
Okay, that's what that's how I messed that up. Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
You may have some practice problems. You may have some practice problems that they talk about. They're gonna, can I erase all this? Is everybody good? Can I erase? You guys have this? Speak now if not. You may see some practice problems where they talk about the city or DOT or whomever is going to come in and pave the road. And they may put a special assessment on the homeowners. Maybe if it's a private road and they're putting special assessment on the homeowners. The trick to determining how, because I have to tell you how much they're going to charge you and da 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 da. But understand that if they're paving the road, you own part of the road, and the person on the other side of the street of you owns part of the road. So this part of the road, you're only responsible for half of it, right? Because your neighbor across the street owns the other half. So when you see those practice problems, you know, they're just going to ask you about this homeowner, this one right here. And I just bring this up because I get this question a lot. So why did I divide by 2, Julie? I don't understand why I divide by 2. Because you're splitting the cost with the person that lives across the street from you. You don't have to pay for that whole part of the road. You got a neighbor to help you. Other questions on this?
Yes, Julie, I have a question.
Sure.
So what you just said, do you mind reiterating? So like giving an example in a question, like what would that question be set up as?
It's one of these questions is this long, and it's going to say, you know, the city's charging you $30 per front foot. So you have 150 front feet, they're charging you $30. So that's 4,500, but you don't own the property on that entire street, do you? So how much are you going to pay? You're going to pay half of it. Right? So you figure out the cost. They'll have to tell you all that, of course. So they'll tell you the front foot. They'll tell you $30 per front foot. The total cost for this part of the road is 4,500, but you have a neighbor, you have somebody across the street from you that owns the other part. So you split that cost. And I get after I do unit 4, I get lots and lots and lots of emails and texts, and I still want to hear from you guys if you're stuck, but I'm just trying to get ahead of the curve here a little bit. Feel free to reach out to me if you have questions though. That's why I'm here. Let's see, is that only the front foot of the properties are the same? That's right. That's right. So this is all assuming that you have 150 front feet and your neighbor, the guy across the street. And again, guys, they're not going to say, you know, they're not going to get that complicated on you. You're not going to have different. But what you need to understand is that you only own half you're only responsible for half. Okay. We good? Everybody good so far? Hang it in there with me. Okay. Another formula you may see, hear me stress the word may. You may see how to find square yards. If you're measuring for carpet or tile or laminate flooring, you use the square yard. To find square yards, there are 9 square yards in a square feet. So you take length times width, divide by 9. That's all you need to know. Square feet to square yards, you divide by 9. So length times width gives you square feet. Divide your square feet by 9, gives you square yards. Go to Lowe's, tell them how many square yards in carpet you need. They'll hook you up. Some math concepts, just some kind of terminology that we use. Cost per square foot, cost per acre. If you're looking at cost per square foot, we're determining how much does each square foot cost. If you're looking at cost per acre, we're determining how much does each acre cost. So if the entire cost of the property is 500,000 and there are 1,200 square feet, take your cost of the property, divide it by the square feet, and you can learn that each square feet, and I rounded, but you can learn that each square foot of that property costs $417. How much does this square foot cost? $417. How much does this one cost? $417. You take the entire, remember we said per sometimes is a fancy word for divide. You're looking at the formula. And again, this is terminology that we use. How much is a square foot of this property? Take the cost of the property, divide it by the number of square feet, and that'll tell you how much each square foot costs. Same thing with cost by acre. You have a $1 million tract of land. It is 12 acres. Take $1 million, the cost of the land, divide it by the number of acres. How much does each acre cost? Every acre costs $83,333. Again, I just rounded for simplicity. The entire cost of the lot divided by the number of acres tells us that every single acre costs $83,333. Cost per square foot, cost per acre. The formula is in the name. Okay, we good? Can I erase? Speak now, if not. You may encounter a weird shape, a weird name called a trapezoid. The heck is a trapezoid? Well, in real estate, where you may find a trapezoid is when you're measuring a bay window. So you have a room with a bay window. The bay window kind of juts out from the house. It sticks out from the house. So here is, where do you want this bay window? Do you want it in the kitchen? So let's put this bay window in the kitchen. So here's your kitchen. And then at the end of the kitchen, you have this window. That's rough, but you guys are with me. So I have the dimensions of the kitchen, and then I have this bay window that sticks out. If it's a bay window that you can walk on, we need to measure it. If it's one of those bay windows that has like the bench that you sit on, then we're not going to measure it. Only if you can walk on it can you measure it. So to measure this kitchen, to get the square feet of this kitchen, guys, remember, when it comes to measuring, the only shapes that I know how to measure are squares, rectangles, and triangles, right? So if the thing isn't in a square, rectangle, or triangle, then I got to kind of chop it up and make it into a space. So if I'm measuring this kitchen, I would just come in first and measure the kitchen itself, the length times the width, to get the square feet of the kitchen. And then I would take this idea of a trapezoid to measure the bay window. So I'm going to kind of take this, blow it up a little bit so we can see it. And this is our trapezoid, kind of. And a trapezoid combines, it's actually three shapes. Remember what I just said? I can only measure squares, rectangles, or triangles. So how do I measure a bay window? I chop it up into shapes that I can measure. So now I have a triangle, I have a rectangle, and I have a triangle. A trapezoid is two triangles and one rectangle. We will look at a better picture in just a minute. I know that's hard to draw. Actually, let's do that now. Turn with me in your book to page. Where's that? Do you have a question? What I'm looking? Turn with me in the back to page 779. In 779, we're looking at a picture of our trapezoid, of our bay window. And the entire width of the top is 10. The entire width of the bottom is 14. You guys seeing that? And then the depth is 2. So how do we measure this bay window? We break it up into 3 pieces. The rectangle, and you can see it beneath you there, the rectangle would be 10 by 2. So I take 10 by 2 to get 20. And then I measure each triangle. If I've already used 10 for the for the rectangle, I've already used up 10. That means I have 4 left, right? 14 minus 10 is 4. So that leaves me 2 for each triangle. So 2 times 2 gives me 4. Divided by 2 gives me 2. I have 2 triangles. So I take my rectangle of 20 plus my 2 triangles to get 24 square feet. This is one of these things that you have to see. So I point out page 779. There's another example in your book at the end of unit 4. I think this is one of these things that you have to see. But when you're looking at trapezoids, the key is to look for 3 shapes, 1 rectangle and 2 triangles. You measure the rectangle, each triangle, and then just add them up. Once you get that 24 for the bay window, then you add it to whatever we got for the kitchen, and that's your total square footage for that kitchen. So we found the length of the width, the square feet of the kitchen. Questions on that? Understanding you need to look at this. I get that. You need to draw it out better than what I can do on on my annotations in Zoom. But kind of just look for those 3 shapes. See those 3 shapes. Again, when you're measuring a property for our purposes, the only shapes we know how to measure are squares, rectangles, and triangles. I showed a octagon house once. It had 8 sides. It was like a circle, but it had 8 sides. It was pretty cool. And my buyer looked at me, and she was a friend of mine too. But my buyer looked at me and she said, "How would you measure this house?" I said, I wouldn't. I would hire somebody, because that's beyond my square, rectangle, triangle knowledge. So when you start getting into these crazy kind of shapes, you may need to bring in an expert to help you out. Again, we're going to talk all about measuring and the rules of measuring when we get into Unit 8. So right now we're just kind of focusing on the kitchen with the bay window, for example. Okay. One rectangle, two triangles. Can I erase this? Please, that's horrible drawing. Let me get rid of that so we don't have to look at that anymore. Okay, so I got a couple square foot and acre problems I'm going to put up for you guys. Again, set your to private chat. Put pencil to paper, do something, see what you get. Back to acres and square feet. Remember our T-bars or your formulas, whatever you want to do. Give you just a few minutes. Tell me in a private chat, A, B, C, or D, and then we'll work it out together. Give you about 30 more seconds. All right, so we see a math problem. What do we do first? Just pick up your calculator and start messing with numbers? No, just read, just read, just read. A lot with a depth of 80 feet and an area of 4,800 square feet was sold for $350 per front foot. What was the total sales price? This is one of these problems that you have to build on it, which is pretty applicable of what you're going to see. I'm looking for the total sales price. The total sales price was sold for $350 per front foot. So in order to find the sales price, I have to know the front foot. Do I know the front foot? Not yet. So step one says I have to find the front foot. You guys with me? So we're kind of like talking our way through it. How do I find the sales price? 350 per front feet. Ooh, what's the front feet? I don't know. So what do? I find the front feet, front foot. So we either take, your length times width, front foot times depth, or we can use our T-bar, solve for front foot, which is our length. I have 4,800 square feet, and I have a depth of 80. And when it comes to these kinds of problems, when you're solving for length or width, I think this is where the T-bar helps, because it tells you what to divide where. Always remember square feet goes on top. So I'm solving for X, which is my front foot. I take 4,800 divided by 80. So I get a total front feet of 60. Check yourself. What's 60 times 80? 60 times 80 is going to be 4,800 square feet. So far, so good, right? Now that I know that I have 60 front feet, the problem tells me that every front foot costs $350. What's the opposite of divide? Multiply. So remember, we saw cost per square foot gave us the cost of each square foot. Now I know the cost of each foot is $350. How many front feet do I have? I have 60 of them. So 350 times 60 gives me a cost of $21,000. So sometimes just talking, again, if you always start with where you want to end, what am I looking for? I'm looking for the total sales price. How do I find a total sales price? I have to know the cost and I have to know the front foot. Do I know the front foot? No. So now I got to find the front foot. So just thinking it through sometimes. And most of you in the chat, looks like you thought it through. Questions on this one?
Are we gonna do another problem like this?
I'm gonna do one more. Yep. And you know what I got for you for this weekend? Say it with me. Practice, practice, practice. Questions on this one?
Julie, I know this might be a little extra, but do you mind telling us what the acres would be on this? I'm just curious.
So what do you guys think? I have how many square feet? I have 4,800 square feet. What's my magic number? So if you take 4,800 divided by 43,560, this is a whopping 0.110 acres. So all you need for acres to find acres is square feet and 43,560. Guys, I will tell you this. They're not going to give you 43,560 on your test. That is a number that you have to know. I saw somebody just get. I love the little ones that want to get young realtors in training. That's what I call them. I'll see them eventually. You just got to be 18 to get a license in this state. So I'll see them. I'll see them soon. Questions on this one? Everybody good? You want to do one more? Of course you do. All right. And then I got plenty of practice for you guys. So we'll look at all the places you can find the practice. Again, private chat, A, B, C, or D. Give about 30 more seconds, see what you got. Okay. What you do first, just read the problem first, right? How many acres are contained in a rectangular land parcel that has a length of 750 feet and a depth of 685? What is the question asking? What are you looking for? You're looking for acres. How do I get to acres? How do I find acres? I have to know the square feet. Do I know the square feet? Not yet. So what's the first thing we need to do? Find that square feet. When I usually do land, I'm such a visual person. And when I do problems about land, I like to draw my picture. So it has a length of 175 and a depth of 685. So I can see my land. I can see the lot that I'm talking about. So the first thing we're going to do is find our square feet. So you can either take length times width, take 175 times 685, or you can use a T-bar, either way. So I take 175 times 685, and I get total square feet of 119,875. How many square feet are in this lot? 119,875. More than or less than 1 acre? It's going to be more than. How many square feet in 1 acre? 43,560. So 119,875 is more than that number. So this problem doesn't help me. But if one of the answer choices was less than 1, we know we could rule that one out. So then the last step, now that I know square feet, I'm going to take one more step. I'm solving for X, which is my acres. I know my square feet now, and I know my magic number. So I take 119,875. I divide it by 43,560, and I get 2.75 acres. Again, this is probably something that you're similar to what you're going to see. It's way too easy to give you square feet and ask you how many acres. So what they're going to do is give you the information that you need. These are multi-step problems, which means you get to use multiple formulas. So you got to kind of start where you want to end and work your way back, right? How do I get to acres? I need square feet. And I know 43,560. Do I know my square feet? No. All right, let's take a step back. I got to find square feet. You guys see what I'm saying? You're just kind of talking it through, talking yourself through, all ultimately caring about how many acres are contained in this lot. Questions?
Oh, yeah. Sometimes I don't know how to read the problem, and that's
Okay.
why I don't understand it.
I think, and I hear you, and that's a very common thing when it comes to math, because we don't read math, right? We do math. So where do you start? And that's why I suggest always focusing on what's the problem asking you. If you know the formula to find acres, then you can, let's say this. Let's do this, Ebony. Let's say none of this exists, right? So I read this problem. I know I need acres. I know there's 43,560. I know acres is my X. I can only have one X at a time, right? I can't go any further until I get more information.
And then they
What's the
start
more
talking,
information that I need the square feet. How do I find square feet? Length times width. What was that?
and then they start talking about like depth and then the length. And then I don't know what it's talking about when they start saying that type of stuff.
And that's and that's what, like, your length and your width is the same as your front foot and your depth. So you may want to go back and watch this recording and
Oh.
get that length and width is the same thing as saying front foot and depth. I think a lot of it's repetition, kind of seeing it, hearing it, doing it over and over and over again until it clicks. Front foot is length, depth is width. The depth of the lot is how deep it is. How far back does it go? Practice. Nobody's leaving this call as an expert on area and measurement, square feet, acres. How do you get good at it? Y'all think the first time Michael Jordan picked a basketball up, he was amazing? He was probably all right, but how do you think Michael Jordan got to be Michael Jordan? What do you think he did? Practice, practice, practice. He probably went a period in his life, if he still doesn't, that if he did anything, he had a basketball in his hand, right? So y'all's basketball is your calculator, but you're with me, right? You got to practice. All right. Getting ready to take a break. Hang on. Before we take a break though, I think we are ready to wrap up Unit 4. So let's talk about a few things to end Unit 4. No more math for a few. Well, I got just a little bit in Unit 5 that we'll see tomorrow. But then you get a math break, which means you guys have the weekend, and it looks like you have a snowy weekend to sit at home and practice math from Units 3 and 4. So the key terms are on page 71 of Unit 4. Unit 4 is pretty short and sweet. The key point review is on page 81. Remember, that's your Cliff's Notes. And then the student quiz for 82 to 84. And there is some math that we just talked about on that quiz on 82 to 84. And then for your practice, everybody please turn with me to the math concepts on page 80 real quick. There is more on page 80 than what you need to know. There's more math in Unit 4 than what do you need to know. So what do you focus on? What math do you focus on? The stuff that we talked about tonight. If you come across something on page 80 and say, we didn't talk about that, cross it out. You guys with me? Don't worry about it unless you really want to, but we're not going to take class time to do it. There's more math in Unit 4 than what you need to know. So I'm telling you, just focus on the math that we did in class. Math facts at the back of the book, 775, 779. Those are our shapes, the trapezoid. Those 50 problems in the back of the book, 50 math problems, 803 to 808. These are the numbers that relate to the math that we just did in class. You're welcome to do all 50, but I'm helping you break it down so you can just focus on the numbers as we do them. Give you, I call this like 201, a little bit more advanced. And in just 1 second, I'll go and learn test pass once you have all this jotted down. So everybody good with that? More math in Unit 4 than what you need to know. So what are you going to focus on? Just what we talked about tonight. So real quick before break, everybody have this? Everybody good? PowerPoints are on Learn Test Pass. So real quick, let's go into Learn Test Pass. And the Unit 4 material, there's just the PowerPoints and a little pretest. So again, you have those page numbers, everything we just talked about. And then the pre-tests are like these little virtual flashcards. Have you guys played with these yet? They're good. I kind of like them, online flashcards. We're getting ready to get into Unit 5. We won't finish Unit 5 tonight, but there's some more practice, math practice. You see, this is 4 and 5. So once you guys do the Unit 5, once we finish Unit 5 next week, there'll be some more math practice in there as well. And you're welcome to go ahead. Just know we haven't talked about. So we're getting ready. When we come back from break, we'll get started on Unit 5. Questions? All right, let's take 10. We come back, Unit 5.
Julie. She is starting the clock. She long gone. No.
Thank you, Keenan, for helping us out. Evidently, when I hit start, it didn't go. When I came back and it was stuck on 10, and I said, "Oh no, what am I going to do?" And I looked at my chart or my chat, and Keenan helped
That's
us
all
out.
good. I figured it out.
Thank you.
I was trying to tell you before you left, but you was gone.
I was
so.
gone. Yeah, I got a fresh orange in the kitchen, so I'm, that's where I was heading. Getting that vitamin C, trying to stay healthy. All right. Let's see, we're back. So let's take attendance. And we are, nope, I'm not hitting buttons right today. Okay, we are, we've got one less than an hour left. So we're going to start on Unit 5 tonight. And of course, wherever we finish tonight is where we're going to pick back up. So Unit 5, we're going to talk about title. We're going to talk about transferring title. We're going to talk about deeds, and we're going to talk about title insurance. I tend to think of Unit 5 as our attorney's unit. The question is, what is it the attorney's done? What is it they do? And this is what we're going to address in Unit 5. So in this unit, we're going to identify the different methods of transferring title. We're going to talk about deeds, and there's essential elements of a deed and there are non-essential elements of a deed. So we're going to talk about those. And then, of course, it would be way too boring just to have one kind of deed. So we have different types of deeds, and we're going to talk about them and what they do. And then we're going to talk about that title examination, recordation, title insurance, that kind of thing. So again, this is our attorney's unit. And at the end, I do have a little bit of math, but it's very little, and we'll get through it. We won't see it tonight, so we'll see that tomorrow. So before we begin in Unit 5, I'd like you all to turn with me to page 86. You guys at the bottom of 86, see figure 5.1. This is going to help us define who people are in various relationships, various transactions. So you got the type of document, you got the giver, and you got the receiver. Somewhere around the giver, I want you to write a big OR. If somebody is giving the document, they're the giver. So for example, you got the grantor, the offeror, the mortgagor. You guys see what I'm saying? This is probably the last time you'll ever hear me say giver. Going forward, you're going to hear me saying giver. The giver is the giver of the document. Next to receiver, I want you to write a big EE. They are the receivee of the document. So you got the grantee, the offeree, the mortgagee. So depending on the type of document we're talking about, we need to know who's giving it and who's receiving it. So specifically, we're going to talk about the deed in this unit. So the giver is the grantor. Who is giving the deed? The seller. The seller is giving the deed to who? To the buyer, also known as the grantee. Do you think they're going to call them buyer and seller on your test? No. How are they going to call them? Grantor and grantee. So I just want to make sure we all see the OR and the EE. Everybody with me? Why don't you guys dog ear this page? Because we're going to come back to this when we talk about the offer and the counter offer and the mortgage. We're going to come back and refer back to this page so we can see that OR and that EE. Everybody good? Everybody good with what we just did? So let's start Unit 15. We're talking about title and what title is. Title is the right of ownership. Title is the idea of ownership. The deed is the documentary evidence. The deed is the proof. You need something tangible to prove that you own this property. So the title is the idea. The deed is the proof. The deed is what gets recorded because that's the document. We'll talk more about the deed in just a second. We're getting ready to see a word, and you can see it in your book on page 86. The word is alienation. If you are alienating yourself from your title or from your deed, you're just separating yourself from it. If you're conveying the property, if you're giving the property to somebody else, you're alienating yourself from it. You are separating yourself from this idea of ownership, the title, and the documentary evidence, the deed. We have several different ways that you can alienate yourself from your title. There are several different ways that you can separate yourself from your title. And the first is voluntary alienation. You are separating yourself from your title on your own free will. And how are you doing it? You're either selling it or you're giving it as a gift, maybe to a loved one. And you're using the deed, the documentary evidence, to convey that interest. So voluntary alienation is done with a deed. Either you're selling it or you're gifting it. You're doing it on your own free will. So let's take a pause and let's talk about the deed. Let's define this deed and talk about the deed. On the top of page 87, you see everything that's written. You don't need to write this down. It's all on the top of page 87. The deed has certain essential elements. In order for a judge to look at a deed and determine if it's going to be valid, the judge is looking for these essential elements. So when we talk about a valid document, a valid deed, it's in the eyes of the judge. Will the judge see this deed as valid? Well, it depends on if we have these essential elements. When I look at essential elements of a document, I tend to think of cake ingredients. You ever baked a cake? You need certain ingredients to have a cake, right? Like you need flour and oil and an egg and water. If you're missing flour, you don't have cake, right? You have like goo. So in order to have a cake, you have to have these required ingredients. Same idea for a valid deed. In order for a judge to look at it and say, this deed is valid, he has to see these required ingredients, these essential elements. So let's look at these. Again, I'm on the top of page 87. The deed has to be in writing. Well, that makes sense because it's our documentary evidence, right? It's our tangible proof. So it stands to reason that it has to be in writing. We have to have legal capacity of the grantor. Who's the grantor? The grantor is the giver, also known as the seller. So we have to have legal capacity of the grantor. The deed has to name the parties. The parties are the grantor and the grantee. So the deed will name the sellers. The deed will name the buyers, calling them grantor and grantee. The deed has to have words of conveyance. There has to be verbiage in the deed for the seller to convey their deed, for the seller to give their intentions to give the deed to the buyer. We have to have specific wording of the seller basically saying, I, the seller, give you, the buyer, my deed. The valid deed is going to have an accurate legal description, Unit 4. The valid deed is signed by the grantor. Problem topic. Does the grantee sign the deed? No. Who signs the deed? The seller does, the grantor, the giver. The grantee has to voluntarily accept it. The buyer has to voluntarily take the deed.
Julie, I have a question.
Yeah.
So it says the last one must be delivered and voluntarily accepted. How do you know that, I mean, that's gone through, that last part?
Well, I'm getting ready to talk about that.
Okay.
And that's why we have an attorney, right? Because the attorney's making sure that this is happening. So how the attorney can assure this is they're going to take this a step further. And I'm getting ready to talk about that in 1 second. Somebody said title was the idea. Deed is the documentary evidence. Deed is the tangible proof. It's the paper. Title is the idea. The deed is the proof. If you guys will, on page 87, in addition to the bullet points that you're looking at there at the top, a little over halfway down, it mentions consideration. There needs to be some form of consideration mentioned on the deed. Consideration is just something of value. It may not state the exact purchase price, but it's going to have some indication that consideration was exchanged. It's a deed for gift. Let's say you're given your, I don't know, say my parents just gave me their deed. They said, here you go. Even if it's a deed for gift, consideration would be love and affection, right? It's just something of value. So these are the required ingredients, okay? If I don't have cake ingredients, I don't have cake. So when a judge is trying to determine if a deed is valid or not, this is what the judge is looking for. If you will, turn with me over to page 88. 88 are the extras. What do you like to put on your cake? Ice cream, whipped cream, sprinkles, cherry, nuts, right? They're not required ingredients. They just add to it. They make it better. Everybody hear what I'm saying? So I can have a deed without these things on page 88. I can have cake without sprinkles, but the sprinkles sure do help, assuming sprinkles are your thing. So these elements that are not required, we see them quite frequently, but they're not required. The judge is not looking for these to determine if the deed is valid or not. So deeds don't have to be witnessed. Sometimes they are, usually they are. There's somebody there watching you sign, but they don't have to be. Deeds don't have to be dated. Most of the times they are, but they don't have to be. Deeds don't have to include the statement of the exact amount of consideration. Again, we talked about consideration on page 87 as well. We have to have some form of consideration, but we don't have to have the exact amount. Deeds don't have to be notarized. Again, quite frequently they are, but it doesn't make for a valid deed. Make a big star, make a big arrow next to the next to last bullet point. This is the problem topic. Deeds do not have to be recorded to be valid. The definition of a valid deed does not say it has to be recorded. Why do we record our deeds? Because we have something called the Connor Act that requires us to record our deeds. A deed itself is perfectly valid if it's not recorded. Connor steps in and says, you're this thing on record. We record deeds because Connor tells us to, not because it creates a valid deed. And then the last one there, deeds don't have to be sealed. If you seal something, you got that like that stamp and you put the embossment on the paper and like the paper rises up a little bit. You guys know what I'm talking about with the seal. Again, it's not required. Can you do it? Sure. There's your sprinkle cherry on top, but it is not required. So it's really, really important that we understand the difference between the essential elements of a valid deed and the elements that we see, but they're not required. The extras, the added ingredients. Questions or I would even do a side-by-side comparison if I were you guys with your notes this weekend when you're studying. I would do a side-by-side. So you can see, these are essential elements. These are the added ingredients. Any questions on that?
I have a question on the requirements, when you were mentioning the several essential elements, where it says the grantor must have the legal capacity to execute a deed. When you say legal capacity, what is that really?
That's a good question. Legal, they got to be in their right mind. They got to be sound. They got to be sober.
Okay, that's what I
Can't
figured.
go to the courthouse drunk and sign your deed. You
Got
got to be of sound and sober mind. So somebody, I think, was that Danielle? I wasn't looking, I'm sorry. Was that Danielle that asked about how we know that they're voluntarily accepted by the grantee? Again, the attorney is there doing it. That's their job. But we can reassure it because Connor says, take this a step further and put it on record. Questions on the required ingredients and the extras? So there are several different types of deeds. It'd be so boring just to have one. There are several different types of deeds. So the first type of deed that we have is the general warranty deed. Can also be called the full covenant warranty deed. Can also be called the warranty deed. The general warranty deed is probably the one that we see most frequently. The general warranty deed is the best deed for the grantee because it offers them the most protection. Who's the grantee? The grantee is the buyer. And what are we protecting the grantee from? The seller. The general warranty deed is the best for the grantee because it gives the grantor the greatest degree of liability. The grantor makes promises, if you will. They offer covenants and warranties to the buyer, to the grantee. The general warranty deed provides the grantee with 5 covenants, 5 warranties, if you will. And there's a on the chat, you can listen and chat at the same time if you want to get into a study group. Maybe after class, I can hang on for a few minutes so you guys can have that conversation. I'd be happy to do that after class. So the general warranty deed offers the most covenants, the most warranties, promises from the grantor to the grantee. So what does the grantor promise the grantee? Well, they offer a covenant of cession and the right to convey. The grantor warrants to the grantee that they are the legal owner of the property and that they have the right to convey it. They have the right to give you their deed. There's a covenant against encumbrances. What is an encumbrance? Everything we talked about in Unit 3. So liens, easements, encroachments. The grantor warrants that the property is free of liens, or at least it will be by the time we convey. Remember, we talked about those mechanics liens. They're warranting that the mechanic can't come back later and put a lien on the property. The grantor promises the grantee the covenant of quiet enjoyment. They warrant to the grantee that the title will be good against third parties, that nobody's going to show up and say, yeah, this is my property. They're offering them that promise. Covenant of further insurance, saying, look, if there's an error in the title, I'll come back and make it right. I'll come back and fix it. If you find a problem later, I'll come back and take care of it. What happens if they lie? I'll talk about that in just a second. And then there's the covenant of warranty forever. Again, the grantor is telling the grantee, if for some reason, for any reason, your title fails in the future, I'll come back and make it right. You need documentation, I'll provide it. You need money, I'll give it to you. Those are some pretty big promises, aren't they? Some pretty big warranties. So what if, I hear you guys, what if the shady seller lies? What if they sign, yeah, here's my deed. First off, the seller signing a document at settlement, they're signing an affidavit, kind of swearing to all these covenants, all these warranties. Again, what if they lie? What if? This is why the new owner, the person that we were just calling the buyer, now known as the new owner, this is why they have title insurance. Title insurance protects the current owner from errors of the past. If any of these covenants fail in the future, the new owner is protected by title insurance. And we'll get to title insurance probably tomorrow night. If something ever comes up, title insurance is always going to look for the grantor first. They're going to go try to find them because they promised they would come back and make it right. What if the seller's dead? What if they're broke? What if they're gone to Aruba? What if they're just MIA? That's when title insurance protects the current owner. That's why title insurance, or the current owner has title insurance. We'll talk more about title insurance, probably get to that tomorrow night. So if the general warranty deed fails, the new owner is protected by that title insurance. Questions so far? General warranty deed. Another type of deed that we may see is called a special warranty deed. Special warranty deed is also known as a limited warranty deed. Why? Because the warranties are limited. It only offers 2 covenants. The grantor promises, yeah, I received this title. I have this title. And the grantor promises that they did not encumber the title. They didn't do anything to it that could affect the new owner. In North Carolina, where we typically see a special warranty deed is with a foreclosure. So I'm going to go back for 1 second, and then we're going to go back to the slide. So if you don't have everything yet, it's okay. So I'm going to go back for 1 second. Let me mention one thing about these 2 deeds, compare and contrast. The general warranty deed is offering all these covenants, all these warranties, grantor to grantee. I warrant this, I warrant that. The general warranty deed, the grantor is promising the grantee that nothing can affect their new title, not just during the time that the grantor owned it, but during the time the owner before them owned it, the owner before them owned it, and so on and so on. The grantor is saying that nobody, not just me, but nobody in the history of this property can come back and negatively affect your title. They're going back to the beginning of time. The special warranty deed is only promising during the time that I owned it. I'm not going back to the owner before me and the owner before them. Only during the time that I owned it. I can only tell you that I have the title and that it was not encumbered during the time that I owned it.
Julie, I have a question.
Yep.
The question will start rolling out. I'm sorry. So I always get confused. The special warranty deed and the bargain and sale.
I'm getting there. I'm getting there next.
Okay. Okay.
Yep. My very next slide. So hang on to that and I might answer it. Okay. So general warranty deed, grantor promises back to the beginning of time. those 5 covenants, special warranty deed, grantor promises just 2 covenants during the time they owned it. The bargain and sale deed is used in some states. We don't see this much in North Carolina. It's most relatable to the quitclaim deed, which I'll talk about in the next slide. With the bargain and sale deed, there is no express warranty. If something is express, it's stated clearly. So the warranty is not stated clearly. The covenants are not stated clearly. Again, we don't use this one much in North Carolina. What we typically use is the quitclaim deed. I'm talking about that next. The big thing to know about the bargain and sale deed is that there is no express warranty. The warranties are not clearly stated. They're not clearly laid out. Okay. Is that Danielle?
It is. Okay, so I see it says in those states that is generally used for foreclosures and tax sales. So doesn't that make it similar to the special warranty deed?
Other states are different. So they may have different foreclosure procedures and da-da-da-da-da.
Gotcha.
And we're going to talk, when we get into our financing units, there's 2 different types of foreclosure processes. So we're going to talk about how North Carolina does it. We're going to talk about some other states do it. And that might be part of the difference too, right? Just the process, the way that we do it versus another state may do it. Okay. So what's a quitclaim deed, you ask? Well, a quitclaim deed is a non-warranty deed. There are no warranties, express or implied. No warranties. The quitclaim deed says, what I got, you get. So if I got nothing, what do you get? Big fat 0, right? If I got nothing, you get nothing. There are no warranties. There are no promises. There are no covenants. Quitclaim deeds are not used to convey property. Typically, where we see a quitclaim deed is to cure a cloud on the title. A cloud on the title is just a mistake. What if somebody's name was spelled wrong? What if the address is wrong? That happens sometimes. So when you find your brand new deed and you find your name is misspelled, you just go down to Register of Deeds, go to your attorney. They'll do a quitclaim deed. Quitclaim deeds can be used for divorce. If the divorce decree is separating the deed, I used a quitclaim deed when I got married. I conveyed the property from me to us. Didn't really change ownership, did we? Just conveyed it from me to us. And how do we do that? We used a quitclaim deed. You could use a quitclaim deed to create an easement. Again, you're not conveying an interest. So with quitclaim deeds, we typically do not see conveyance. On page 90, I just like to point out things. About halfway down, you got the in practice. That's a real life application. Pay attention to like in practices for examples. I think that kind of helps. Some of this information is dry. I'm not going to lie. I think we figured that out. If not, you will. So I think the examples and the in practices help. And this in practice reminds us, I can't draft a deed. Why? Because I'm not an attorney. Drafting deeds is a legal thing. Advising people what deed to take. When your buyer calls you and says, should I get a general warranty deed or a special warranty deed? I can't answer that question. I can't offer legal advice. And telling somebody how to take title, telling somebody what deed to take, or drafting a deed for somebody is that offering legal advice. Stay in your lane. Unless you're an attorney, don't act like an attorney. Do I have any attorneys? I've never had an attorney in pre-licensing, and I would love one. I had one in post once. That poor girl, I picked her brain. Oh. She made the mistake of telling me. Stay in your lane. I'm not an attorney. I'm not a surveyor. I'm not an appraiser. I am just a real estate agent. Pages 90 to 91, some other special purpose deeds in North Carolina. You know, I suggest you look through them all. I just pulled a few out. The correction deed could also be used to correct a misspelled name, correct an address. Which one are they going to use? It's just up to the attorney, the mood that they're in that day. So correction deed could be another way. The trustees deed, remember in unit 2, we talked about the trust, and the trustee was managing the affairs of the trust. They would use the deed, the trustees deed, if they were conveying that. Sheriff's deed, if the court's taking the property, if the judge is, y'all, if the judge is taking the property, the judge is not going to go knock on the door to take the property, are they? What are they going to do? They're going to send the sheriff or their deputy. So they would use a sheriff's deed. And then a deed of gift, again, that for love and affection. My parents decided to give me their house. We would use, I'm not paying for it, so they would have to give me a deed of gift, and our consideration would be for love and affection, just because I'm just such a great daughter. Here's our house, honey. Top of page 91, my favorite one. What do we get up and go to work for every day? The deed of release. What's that mean? You're being released from the mortgage company. You've paid it off. You've satisfied that lien. That's a good one. I got to share with you guys. December 30th, 2021, we paid off our little condo. I'm currently waiting for my deed of release in the mail. They said 30 to 45 business days. I think I'm on like day 7, and I haven't gotten it yet. And I'm still patiently waiting. But that's the next thing I got coming. I've paid it off. Now I'm waiting on my deed of release. It's releasing me from the mortgage company. It's exciting. And I got a tenant, so, oh yeah. Any questions on your voluntary deeds? Voluntary alienation. You're voluntarily separating yourself from your property. Okay. If you have voluntary alienation, you also have involuntary alienation. You could have your property taken from you, usually carried out by an operation of law. On page 92, there's a nice little chart that kind of summarizes what we're getting ready to talk about. So it sums it up for you. The first form of involuntary alienation is called escheat. When an individual dies without a will or heirs, the property goes escheat. No will, no heirs. The property goes escheat, which means the state will take the property and sell it or use it for their purposes, whatever they want. If we don't see it tonight, we'll see it tomorrow night, but there's another thing that we'll call if somebody dies without a will, but they do have heirs. We'll see that again. If we don't get to it tonight, we'll go see it tomorrow. So for escheat, if somebody dies escheat, they die without a will or heirs, so the state gets the property. Another form of involuntary alienation, eminent domain. You guys heard of this? Eminent domain. If the government wants your property, guess what the government's going to do? They're going to take your property. How do they take it? Eminent domain. Eminent domain is the right of the government to take your property for public good. That's the key. They can't just take it because they want to. They take it for public good. An example of this, what if they want to widen the road in front of your house? They want to add maybe a turn lane. So they need to take a portion of your front yard so they can add, if they decide, if DOT decides that that's the best interest for the public is to widen your road, then you will lose that portion of your property to eminent domain. They will compensate you for the portion of the property that they take. If they take your whole property, they'll compensate you for the whole property. If they just take 5 feet of front footage, now we know what that means, right? If they just take 5 feet of front footage, they'll compensate you for that. The reason I have just compensation in quotation marks, they do compensate you for what they take. But what they don't compensate you for is sometimes the value of your property changes. Think about it. If they take 5 feet, that means your house is now 5 feet closer to the road. Your house is now 5 feet closer to the busier road because they just widened it. You may lose value in that, but they're only going to compensate you for what they take. Sometimes I get asked this a lot. Can I fight it? Can I fight it? You know, if you get a letter that the government's taking your property, eminent domain, you want to fight it, get you an attorney, see what you can do. I can't tell you if you're going to fight it or not. You want more money? Get you an attorney. I've heard of like a few people successfully doing this, but for the most part, what they're offering you is what you're going to get. I can't tell you if you can get more money or not. What I'm telling you is call your attorney. Yeah.
Do they base it off like as far as just compensation? Is it like a parameter or a way they way they like determine what compensation is? Because granted, with the market, it fluctuates so much. Compensation can be completely different from like 3 to 6 months.
Agree. So they're going to have somebody come out and kind of assess the value, you know, today. So when you get that letter, it's going to say, you know, we did an assessment and based on the value today, this is what your 5 feet's worth, you know, this is what we're offering you. So yeah, I mean, they're not going to go back like 10 years and say that's what it was worth then. So they will look at something current. Where's my High Point people? Do I have anybody in High Point? Anybody been down Skeet Club lately? Crazy things going on down Skeet Club, right? Skeet Club does not look the same as what it did a year ago. There's a lot of eminent domain going down Skeet Club and anywhere. I mean, anywhere with growth, and you have road projects. I mean, you don't have to go far in the triad to find a my Kernersville people, that beltway. How long have they been talking about that beltway? And how many properties has that beltway affected? I don't know for sure, but my gut tells me there's some eminent domain going on. People lost property for that public good, for that beltway, for the Skeet Club needed widening. Let's be honest, you know, but there were people that lost that property for our public good.
So Julie, in that instance, you lose that square footage. It's now obtained by the government, but doesn't that mean you're going to have to kind of like redo everything as far as your square footage and what's been recorded?
Your property lines change. So now we got to get a new survey, right? I mean, yeah, absolutely.
The government doesn't do that for you?
I don't know that for sure, but my gut says no. That's just what my first initial knee-jerk reaction, you know. And it's hard to answer that because even if I did know, every city, every county, every municipality is different. So they, you know, Forsyth County might handle it different than Guilford County.
Is it possible for them to be encroaching, or eminent domain erases all of the encroachment?
No. I I so appreciate what you're trying. Danielle is for the people, and I so appreciate that. But no. This is the government. we're
Stay in my
talking
lane.
about
I'm
here.
not a lawyer, right? Stay in my lane.
This is the government we're talking about here. So yeah, Taryn, people generally don't enjoy getting that letter in the mail. I mean, I've never heard woohoo, eminent domain. I mean, that's just not something that, you know. My day class, somebody in my day class reminded us the other day, y'all remember that song, I fought the law and the law won? There we go.
Don't you get isn't that kind of like when politics fall into the situation too?
Woo, we are so not going there. But if the yeah, I mean, I don't know about but no, but government, let's just government. Don't matter what side of the fence we're on, government. That's about as political as we're getting in this class. Fair enough? Okay. Eminent domain, if they take the property, if there's an existing lease in place and that terminates the lease. I mean, obviously they're going to give the tenant notice, give them time to go somewhere. It's not like they're going to show up and say, if they're taking the entire property, they're not going to show up and knock on the door and say, get out, right? The tenant has rights. What are the rights of the tenant? We're going to talk all about the tenant landlord relationship in Unit 11. Eminent domain. Another form of involuntary alienation is lien foreclosure. Failure to pay your debts, for example, your mortgage. The mortgage company could foreclose on you and take the property through the foreclosure process. We're going to talk all about foreclosure. Our financing units are units 14 and 15. So I'm not going to say too much about foreclosure right now. Just know that foreclosure is an involuntary alienation. And then the last form of involuntary alienation that we're going to talk about is called adverse possession. You could lose your property because somebody else believes that the land is theirs. Do you guys remember back in Unit 3, we talked about easements. And in particular, we talked about an easement by prescription. And we said an easement by prescription, if somebody's been using your land anyway, the courts could rule that you have an easement because you've been using the land. Adverse possession is taking easement by prescription a step further. Easement by prescription gives you the right to use the land. Adverse possession gives you the land. If you've been using somebody else's property for a certain amount of time, I'm getting ready to talk about that certain amount of time, and you go to the judge could grant you either the whole property or a portion of the property. Let's go back to that fence. If your fence is on somebody's property for X amount of time, eventually they could just give you the portion of that property where your fence has been. What? Is that not crazy? Adverse possession. So what's these periods of time? Well, it depends. Something called color of title. Color of title is just some kind of faulty document or reason to believe that the property is yours. So if you have color of title, you could claim adverse possession within 7 years. If you don't have color of title, you could claim adverse possession within 20 years. So how long before you can take somebody's property through adverse possession? It depends. Do you have a reason to think that it's yours? You can do it in 7 years. You don't have a reason, you can do it in 20. Anybody claiming adverse possession has to go stand in front of a judge. We have to go through the legal process. And when anybody stands in front of the judge to claim adverse possession, the judge is going to ask them about ocean. They need to be able to claim ocean in order to claim the property. Is the use open? Is it well known to others? You're not hiding the fact that you're using this property. I don't know about y'all, but I can't hide a fence, right? It's open to others. You can see that fence. Think about an abandoned property. The whole property's been abandoned. You move your trailer on there. Are you hiding your trailer? So the judge is going to determine if the use is open. Is it well known to others? Is the use continuous? Has the use been uninterrupted use for the last 7 years or 20 years? Is the use exclusive? Exclusive means there's only one claimant. There's only one person trying to claim adverse possession. You don't have 5 people showing up trying to claim it. It's exclusive. You just have one. Adverse. Does the claimant intend to claim the property? This doesn't just happen automatically. They have to go to the judge. Again, they have to go through the legal process. Can't just wake up one day and say, well, my property now. It has to be adverse. You have to go to a judge and claim the land, the property, or a portion of it. And then, is the use notorious? Are you using it without permission of the owner? If you don't have permission to be there, but you've been using it anyway, 7 years, adverse possession, 20 years, adverse possession. So again, easement by prescription, you're going for possession. You're going for permission to be there. Adverse possession, you're going for the property. Is that mind-blowing to y'all? Great question. Can a squatter claim adverse possession on an abandoned home? If they've been there 20 years and they can claim motion, that squatter very well may get the property. I was fortunate one time to have a police officer in my class. And at this point, because all of us are sitting there going, I mean, even me, I'm still, every time I teach this, I'm like, what? How is this a thing? And the police officer explained to us that getting somebody off of your property isn't as easy as one may think. Why don't we just get the squatter to go away? Because getting somebody off of your property is a lot harder than what one may think. But remember what I just said about notorious. You're there without permission. So what's the one way to stop somebody from claiming adverse possession? Give them permission to be there. You can tackle other legal battles to get them off your property. But if you give them permission to be there, when they go stand in front of the judge and the judge says, was this notorious? Did you have permission? And they say, yeah, I had permission. At least you're not going to lose your property by adverse possession. Get an attorney and go through other channels to get that person off your property, but at least you won't lose it. So that's the one way I know to prevent you from adverse. One, check on your abandoned properties every once in a while, right? Drive by and, check on them. But 2, get your fence off of somebody else's yard. Don't let that time go on after 20 years. Because again, the judge could say, your fence has been there for 20 years. So you know what? I'm going to redraw your property lines. There's another reason to get a survey, right? I'm going to redraw your property line and I'm going to give this portion of the property to that person with the fence. What y'all think about that? Right? That's just mind-blowing stuff to me. Still is. Every time I have this conversation. So, 8:29. What's your time, Julie? We're going to stop here today. I'll hang around for a minute if you guys want to chat with each other and set up a study group, whatever. You can, do that.